Thanks for having me. My name is Mayuresh Raut. We do a lot of deep tech investments, quantum, semi, space, EV value chain. A lot of these areas we have investments in, we'll double down more on. We had a hardcore hardware manufacturing investment all the way back in 2018. I kid you not, there was not another VC investor who was ready to put down money. The irony is that's the only startup that is profitable. It can be taken public on the SME exchange. And that is despite the fact that Anand Mahindra was an investor with us. The Zoho guys saw merit. They put a large check from their balance sheet. And Tony, another founder of Zoho, again, cut a large check in his personal capacity. The reason why I'm narrating this is if I were to even assume that we'd be having a panel like this, focus on defense, even a year back, I would think, what are you smoking, drinking, whatever. But lo and behold, here we are. There's a bunch of guys. I think you're a fantastic panel. We have two folks from the defense. One a serving officer, and I'm really surprised that you stayed back the whole day. So we need more folks like you. There's the other gentleman who's passed over to the bad civilian side of things, and I'm sure he has an interesting story to narrate. There's somebody from T-Hub, and T-Hub guys, TWorks guys, do better, right? I've been here since the morning, and this is the only lady on the panel. This doesn't work. You got to have more of them. Diversity and a different piece of opinion has to be there. Fantastic background, condensed matter, material physics. There are some material science guys like us around here, and I'm sure we can contribute a lot. And your perspectives on how the IP stacks up onto this will be really interesting. And then we have a founder, Semiconductor. I mean, I don't envy your life. He's trying to do semiconductors and he's trying to sell for defense. I have a semiconductor portfolio startup, and these guys have been at it for 12 years. So I don't envy your life. Again, my kudos to the TWorks guys. I just had my annual event, and we had everybody from the ANRF CEO to our moon man, who's an advisor on our fund, and a bunch of guys, quantum, and it was an effort to bring them together. And you've pulled off a fantastic act in trying to pull this together. We've been introduced in some shape or form, but I would like you to at least whichever way, the choice is yours. Speak about how are we addressing the trifecta for which this panel is, capital, partnerships, and policy. What is it that you bring to the table? And the founders, hopefully we have some at least in the audience, who would know who to kind of get hold of and have conversations.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Farhan from TWorks, director here. We do not bring anything to the table. We bring the table. That's what TWorks does here. So, the problem with hardware innovation is that it's very expensive to do that, right? Software, I mean, you just open your laptop and keep hacking away at it. But you require, whether you're a startup or you're Tata Advanced Services, you require about 500 crores to be sunk before the first prototype is out. And that's what TWorks is. TWorks already has about 400 crores worth of facility that you see here. Another 150 crores is coming up there. 70 startups who are physically hosted here, plus an ecosystem of another 200 startups. So we basically are the hosts for entrepreneurship, for hardware entrepreneurship. We know it's a very difficult thing, but it's an essential thing for India's growth. I mean, India cannot think of surviving on software alone. And our job here is to support entrepreneurship in all its forms, de-risk as much as is possible, connect them as we are doing today with the funders and the founders, and let the conversation and the prototyping happen. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Ashutosh Jha. So what I bring to the table, before coming to that, a little bit of background about myself. So 22 years in the army. And after that, along with that, I did an MBA in FinTech and then keep studying as an independent researcher, I work on AI, specifically the epistemic decay in large language models, basically how the hallucination propagates. And here specifically, what I get to the table is a combination of policy, IP decisions, and the hard cash. Because after switching from army to corporate in the first 1 month, I led the acquisition of a drone manufacturing company for my company portfolio. So that involved consideration of the IP, consideration of strategy where we can use it, what is the product market fit, and ultimately putting hard cash on the table. So a combination of things. Thank you for the opportunity.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I am Brigadier Ashish Johar. I am the Commandant of the Simulator Development Division, SDD. Few of you know about it. Located very much in the high-tech city of Hyderabad. And SDD has been around, I mentioned it in my opening remarks, for last 40 years. We have been spearheading technology infusion in training. That was our main forte for last so many years. We were the pioneers in development of driving and weapon simulators, which various army, all three services have been using. And we have actually caused the mushrooming of the entire defense simulator industry, which is there today. Much of it is now even being exported. Having traveled that far, we are now even focusing on niche technology areas like digital twins, artificial intelligence, robotics. So these are the areas we are mandated to take up experimental works on behalf of the Indian Army. We are open to any and every idea which a startup can have. Nearly we have 2 or 3 pitches a week given to us from anywhere in the country. We are open on VC. We are open on visits. You can come to us, have a look at our product. We have got 6 verticals. We are working on AI, robotics, drones, the vehicle simulators and the weapon simulators, and simulated games. We are actually, if somebody has seen that movie, Gran Turismo, that is a kind of simulation which we hope to make so that our troops, our fighters, our commanders are prepared for battle much before the actual battle. And as the technology is changing, handling technology is also equally important by men in uniform like me. It's not that we will have you on the front line. It'll be us, and we have to be trained to handle that technology. What I bring to the table is openness. The mere fact, like you mentioned, I have been here whole day. I've tried to go around each and every startup and trying to understand what kind of homegrown technology you people are getting. And we'll be more than happy to work with anyone in this field. Anything in tech, you can please come to me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a privilege to be a part of this discussion. My name is Dr. Vijeta Jha. I am the founder of VJuridic, an intellectual property firm which is headquartered in Chennai. I am a theoretical physicist, an author, and a mentor for, especially in the current times, for the budding entrepreneurs. And what I bring to the table is that it's the very foundation on which the whole technology is based, that how you secure the ownership, how you frame the ownership architecture before you enter into any international discussions, before you enter into any investor discussions or any third-party arrangements, how you can secure what you have built diligently. So that is what I bring to the table. The gaps which are there, the mistakes which you can make as a startup, the legal agreements which you need to have it in place when you enter into agreements with a third party, and how do you ensure that the technology you are using, whether somebody else was owning it, who was owning the background IP of the, and how to keep the technology operational across its whole life cycle. That is, whether if there are operational changes, do you have the sufficient rights? Do you have the capacity to basically keep it operational? So all of these strategies, how to build it at the inception itself and not to wait till you have already built the prototype or you have actually, moving into the deployment stage. So that is what I bring to the table. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Arvind here. I run a small startup called Deep Lead Semiconductors. This journey about solving accidents on roads. We have too many accidents, more than 5 lakh accidents in India, 2 lakh deaths. And this is been there continuously for last 10, 15 years. It's only growing. One of the key things what I discovered is the reason it is so high is the semiconductor chipset that goes into making an ADAS affordable is not affordable. It's almost like $10,000, $8,000. So if we want to make zero accidents in India, we have to build the chipset. That's what motivated me 6 years ago. I have finally come to a place where we are starting to demonstrate our technology. And the thing I bring to the table in this forum, in this panel is the context of a founder. What is that he goes through? What is the policy changes required? Especially from a semiconductor point of view, because it's the foundation of all technology. What we are heading into is an AI era where AI will do AI software. The main thing that will come down to is the compute that is running the software. If we don't build our semiconductors right from drone SoCs, or we don't build our AI compute, we will be a very high risk country. So one of the things that I was talking to Mayur was that defense tech requires an AI, especially for drones, because we are spending almost 2 lakh crores, the market in that. And if we don't have our own indigenous semiconductors, which are addressing those, it's very difficult. That is from a policy point of view. The second thing is from a founder or a semiconductor company, there needs to be a lot more done. Already DLI is there. There's a lot more momentum is there. But I see still a gap for a founder to cross that valley of death. We call it as valley of death for founders, which needs to be like a big chasm has to jump. That comes, thanks for us. Defense has come. Ashish sir, SSD and MCME have given us the first orders. We could display our semiconductor FPGA boards there and showcase. I would recommend most startups which are facing this problem of valley of death to look at defense as a way of crossing the chasm. Once you cross that, your technology is validated. You have stringent norms in Army. They are very comfortable to work with. Once you do that, you go to the market. You have a product. Okay, thank you.
Super. We've had sessions since morning. We spoke about startups, policy. We have the IDEX folks. We even had a reporter covering defense, which again was pleasantly surprising to me. One of his fraternity made a call to me a few months back. He wanted my view on what's happening in defense. And he threw a number at me, which was eye-opening for me. He said, out of the investments that I've gone in deep tech, the sector that has drawn most VC dollars is defense. It's as hot as anything. But at the same time, we have enormous challenges. The fact that, I've interacted with DRDO folks. I've been to South Block. I speak with all the legacy IITs. But still, I was not aware of the facility that you run. If that is the fact of folks who've been in the ecosystem, imagine the plight that the startup founders have. I kid you not. I was in a room. The policy change is for real. Is it translating fast enough? That question is up in the air. I was in a room where the super boss of all the IIT directors, there were about 15, 20, 25 of us investors along with other ecosystem guys. There was no press. He made this comment, and I've not heard a minister make this comment. He said, the nation has given you enormous resources over the years. And the fact that you have 0-day placements getting multi-crore salaries, that is not the metric. I want to start rating you on how many startup founders came out of you and who are the guys who raised, forget unicorns, but who built out substantial businesses. So that is for real. But what I'd like to hear from you, Brigadier, is how can we address this curse that our ecosystem has? Forget various branches of the forces. Two programs in the IIT just don't talk to each other. In the IIC, we have the same problem. How can we, and I'd like to hear your view, how can folks like us enable that the right set of data points are in the hands of the founders? Because if that is not solved, then all these programs are just pie in the sky.
Well, a very, very valid and relevant issue you brought out, Mayur. services, you must have heard of theaterization. They're trying to, become together and operate together. But industries also I've been working in silos, industry, academia, and various part of these services also. And like you said, I'm sure half of the people in this audience also have not heard about an organization like mine. We are mandated R&D organization, very few. So there are many steps which have been taken, though they are baby steps. But any organizational change, structural change is first baby steps. Like for example, all the defense officers are now doing their masters in technology from various IITs and IIS. They are being mentored from day one, from the day they join. They are mentored by the professors and also monitored by the services. So they are kind of a bridge. We have also started posting officers on permanent staff in the IITs, few IITs, not all, so that the incubated startups in these IITs and IIS, they have somebody to talk to. We have organizations like mine. There are a few more like mine in the Indian Army and same in the Navy and Air Force, which are generally based on startups. We are reaching out to startups in forms of interactions like this. This is a golden opportunity for me. Or in seminars, I in various seminars which are there in the country, I go generally with a mind of scouting, not seeing, but scouting for startups which can do a particular task. So I would say I would not call it a curse in the sense. The organizational changes take time. Of course, technology is much faster. But whenever we deal with government orders, the pace is generally slower because what maybe the army looks as it a product which is a robust product, which many of the speakers covered earlier. It should last. It should not, we don't know where the next war is happening. So it should last till the starting of the next war. It may happen tomorrow or 5 years or 10 years hence, but it should not peter out in just 1 or 2 years. So the robust product comes with time. But all these steps which are being taken for getting the ecosystem working to one direction or some direction, I think will take shape. We have to give it some more time. That's what my take is.
Fantastic. Lieutenant Colonel, I'd like to hear your view. You come from one of my hometowns, DIIT, NDA, all of those. I believe you've spent some time doing some coursework there. What is your view? How are you seeing things on the other side of the fence?
This last part.
How are you seeing things on the other side of the fence? How can folks like you enable us to start reaching into these siloed ecosystems that exist?
Yeah. So let's start with the first stage where I think a lot of startups actually need support is that the approach that is taken is I have a product and I want to sell it. Rather than that, if you look at the countries which have got good defense innovation history, like for example, take Israel or Israel is a very apt example. So what they have is the defense forces, because per force all of them because of conscription have a defense experience, and plus they have active participation of the end user right from the point where the product is being conceptualized. Here, what I find is that, especially the startups and all, like we have a product and now we have to sell it. So that is one aspect. Second aspect now, of course, that is the from a military perspective, that is the challenge. And coming to the civil perspective now that I'm on the other side. So one big difference between functioning in the defense forces and functioning in corporate is the aspect of finance. In defense force, once a project is approved, it is approved. Here, what happens is that whether you have, you may have a project approved, but then your CFO is looking at the quarterly numbers. People are looking at, okay, how much return, what time frame return. In fact, I was speaking to one of the potential investors for my company, and we were talking about discussion. He was to invest some X amount of money, and his question was, okay, with this money, you plan to do these things. So when do we expect the return and how much? I gave him that this percentage, after 18 months, you can start. And the response was, in pure Hindi, isse achha main byaj pe de du. We don't have that production mindset, producer's mindset. It's more of a financer mindset. So that's the difference.
Farhan and Arvind, I'll come to you, but please allow me to go to the lady first. IP, that is the several $1 million question that founders spend a lot of sleepless nights over. There are mandates from the government organizations as to they need IP to be shared, and we had this discussion where the gentleman from IDEX made a point of view, and you and I concurred that that's not the case. But how do you help founders structure their thought process around IP? What is a must-have? What is the give and take there? How do you advise founders when they come to you for advice on these areas?
The defense innovation ecosystem, I feel, is no longer at a place where we needed to prove that we are capable of innovation. The scale itself tells the story. We are no longer dealing with isolated innovation projects, but we are we are building a serious national defense industrial ecosystem. But this is also the stage where we need to be intellectually honest, because innovation is not the same as strategic capability, where I was coming from. A successful demonstration or a deployment is not the same as a technology which can be independently qualified, manufactured to scale, repaired at fields, upgraded securely, sustained along its entire life cycle, and even exported responsibly. So the question we need to ask here is that who controls the technology along its entire life cycle? So intellectual capital is the whole set of assets which allows a technology to be independently controlled and sustained. It includes patents and industrial designs, as everyone must be knowing, but it also includes the source code, the manufacturing know-how, the architecture diagrams, the vendor know-how, the integration expertise, the cybersecurity documentation, trade secrets, and most importantly, the rights and capability to modify and upgrade the system.
Brigadier, you want to chime in because we discussed this off the cuff?
Yeah, that's very rightly pointed out. So, it may be easy to join technology and make a product, and which of course will do the task. But what is important, and especially for defense application, is that you build it from bottom up. It takes time, like the startup Axel, Aero, and of course Deep Grid. It takes more time, but it is customizable. It is upgradable. Tomorrow, if some higher end technology changes and the strategy changes, so you can also change that product, change that weapon system, or change that technology accordingly. If you don't have the source code, you are dependent on the third party. So that is the direction to go. That is where I feel the famous valley of death is, where this thing does not happen, because while IDEX winners emerge, but not many go ahead. Not so. So is that thing maybe what IP, what the lady mentioned, is if we start with an honest IP, we will end with an honest product. And if we have an honest product, we will be able to push that product through the life cycle.
So as a deep tech VC, I have a view, and I'd like to hear your view, Vijayna. Yes, IP is important. I would definitely like to know if this product that they're building is IP-able. But should they go ahead and file it? That exposes to the world. The lens I use it is, this is a means to an end for me. If the product that he's building on is not going to fructify into a business, then I start looking at what are the monetizable assets, and that's where IP stands out, right? I mean, if you talk about it, it's monetizable. So it's not a must-have for me. But what is your view? Should they go out and file it, or should they at least go out and put all the intellectual rigor that has to be put in to make sure there is something IP-able and leave it there?
So a very interesting question, and I think a lot of people have confusions on that aspect. First of all, should we file IP? Now, having the sufficient intellectual capital to build a technology or to even operate or maintain a technology is one thing, but whether you have the authority to use it. Have you done freedom to operate? Do you have a positive freedom to operate assessment in India and also other jurisdictions where India now seeks to serve? Do you have the ownership architecture where you know that if there is any background intellectual property, it is whether it is owned by the startup or DRDO or the research institution, then who will own the foreground IP which is created during the project? Then who will own the improvements, derivatives, or any design modifications? Because when you actually deploy a technology, there's a lot of know-how which comes during the integration and testing and deployment of the product. And then again, coming to the end user, that what rights does the user have regarding the maintenance and operation of the technology or any emergency use? So, for example, if an Indian company is able to assemble a product in India, but they do not have the design authority, that is to repair or maintain it, or to keep it operational, or to sustain it, then we may have local production, but where is the strategic autonomy? How do we sustain if there is, and especially talking about defense, if there is a conflict, or if there is a supply chain mismanagement, or if there is a disruption or a cyber incident, then where is our self-reliance then? So that is your answer.
Completely agree. Farhan, let me come to you. Spend some time researching about you. I have a fantastic, interesting background. I believe you raised some money way back in 2019 for a startup.
We actually, I've been an angel investor for some time.
Yeah, so let's see. I'd like the audience to know this is not an easy thing. We raised money all the way back in 2019 at a very early valuation. He has some revenues, 16 lakhs or so, thereabouts, per ROC. If it's not correct, please correct me. And he's also been part of a fund, the Electron Fund, which we've been in Kerala, and I've spoken to Anup about this. Which is to say that this is not something that you can be self-taught or say I was the first to put something else and get it right. I mean, it's all about money. It's all about dhanda. If you can't get it, then it's just you're reliant on the PR and the tailwind the sector has. And that brings you, and then you also have Lama Khan, right? I mean, which is as far away from deep tech, right? So fantastic, you are what you're doing. And then you do what you're doing at T-Hub. And we need more of this. Joginder promised me that this would be the AWS for the manufacturing side of things. Fantastic. But how are you guys thinking about this? What is the short-term and the long-term vision? And I think we need more guys like you to have programs like these.
Thank you very much. So I have, it's great that you talked about what do you do short-term and what do you do long-term. Okay. I think long-term, and this is actually probably unpalatable to a lot of people, we have to invest in science. We are very technology heavy, we are very science poor. Okay, how much of our funding goes into mathematics, right? I mean, there's a mathematician sitting right here. So the AI that you see now was invested in about 2 decades ago. There's a lag of 2 decades between science to technology, right? And we are not investing there. As a result, there are very few startups which are actually coming out of universities. There are very few of them coming out of there. So that actually is the long pole here, that we need to get that right. The other problem is, and this is the simple stuff which we can do, at TWorks we are trying to get this done, which is to remove the regulatory problems which are there, right? For example, in the US, when people say that, for example, if you look at SpaceX, all of those as kids have flown model rockets, which we are not allowed to do. In the US, you can actually build your own aircraft and fly it without a license. Here, to fly an indoor drone, you require a license, right? We do not have any equivalent of the Mojave Desert where you can go and actually launch things. So one of the things that I've been pursuing, for example, with Telangana government, is to give us 10 cubic square kilometers of experimental space where you do not require a license, where you can go and do whatever you need to do. We are unable to do RF work because you have to go to WPC to get the permission. We can't do encryption because there is TC from where you require certification. So we have to ease the startups to do things quickly and fail quickly, right? So that actually is one of the things that we hope at TWorks will be able to do. Startup costs, I have already spoken in my introduction that, with the infrastructure which we are building here, we are hopeful that that thing will come down. It's really amazing the sort of infrastructure that we have here now. You could actually walk in here, use the CAD software. For example, just the other day, we bought the Dassault's software, which costs about $500,000 for CAD work, right? It's just impossible for anybody else to, afford that. That in Silicon, just buying the stuff is so expensive, right? So we are going to invest in that here. But the final thing also is, and this is actually, more up your line, is that we do not have funds which focus on long gestation startups, especially in hardware. It takes a long time to do this, right? I mean, if you look at SpaceX, on one hand, you'll say SpaceX, actually, they raised us $30 million to start with before the first launch. In $30 million, they managed the first launch. But 25 years down the line, they became profitable. So when your lending partners are putting, a cost at hurdle, sunsetting it in 5 years, it just can't happen. You require a completely differently worked funding system, whether it's coming from the government or the private sector. And that actually is also a big challenge now for the startups. So I think all these put together are the challenges that we need to, figure out and to formulate. I mean, for example, when we built our first satellite, ISRO could not take an Indian customer because the rate card was in dollars, which is why we had to go to SpaceX and fly our first payload on Falcon 9. But now, thankfully, that is gone. So what they did is, I mean, they are very innovative people. They said, we'll fly you for free. We're probably the only payload that they've ever flew for free. So I think that's the general landscape. There is a short-term stuff which we need to do, which is mostly regulatory in nature, and get the funds in place. But the long-term is that we have to invest in science rather than the technology part of it.
So you bring up a great point. SpaceX is not a rocket launching company, as in most of the revenue comes from Starlink. So you got to have another vehicle that funds you the main business. And interesting point you bring up, and the recurring problem, and I'll come to you, Arvind, because this is my segue into what the question I want to pose to you is, we have a bunch of founders we work with in space. The constant ask, the biggest bottleneck for all our space founders is, how do they get their payload into space? As of now, till ISRO fixes their next set of launches, they are reliant on Musk's SpaceX. I have a founder who has to come up with 25 crores to get his payload on Musk's next satellite. And these slots come at a premium. And guess who's going away making the money? Not Elon Musk. It's the aggregators and the intermediaries there who are going out of the money. So our ask of to us in space is, why don't you guys think of 1,000 crore that you park where instead of the intermediaries going out and making money, you start buying slots on SpaceX and start apportioning it to our founders. The GPU guys did it. There's 10,000 crores that was given to that. Most of them are eating dust. We need to do that. The reason why I bring this up is, you are in the dungeons. You are the guy who's facing all of this. There's DLI that is thrown at you. There's semiconductors that is thrown at you. How are things? And the reason I mentioned what SpaceX really is getting revenue from and what they're doing, you stayed alive for a while, right? And you had some other revenue engine that was cranking that enabled you to get to the point that you are. There was no DLI. There was no PLI. Defense was doing its own thing. What is the message? And this is a critical message that should go out to the founders, because guys like will not show up when you are just an idea, right? And you need something on the ground. How? Take the founders through your journey.
See, one of the key things in semiconductors, it takes about 50 crores to do a tape out. When you go and tell anybody that you're running a semiconductor story, they'll first say, who's going to buy your chips? And when you go to the companies which are going to buy the chips, they'll say, is it SLD rated? Is it military grade rated? So you have two sides problem. First, you have to tape out. You have to get certified. Then you have Tata Motors or Mercedes or any defense companies willing to work with you. So the two-level challenge is, one, the customer is not going to give you LOI without certifications. One, the investors are very cagey, I should say, not generally over.
It's a fact. Don't be kind.
50 crores when we go and ask them, you have not even done a prototype. You have done a FPGA board. What is the guarantee that this is not going to burn? This is the biggest challenge I have faced for 6 years, and I continue to face. It's not that easy. The best thing that happened is there is RDI funds, the NRF funds. The government is trying to push through policies. So we applied through professors, IIT professors, we applied through RDI. And the biggest benefit I have seen is from defense. Defense is willing to try out on FPGA boards. Defense is going to give you that first contracts, that LOIs that you need to convince the. So we have successfully crossed two Aditi, four. We have participated in 4, and we have crossed the second round of discussion. The third is there. If we cross that, that's the first metrics for investors. Oh, this guy is good. He has crossed this line. But from a semiconductor point of view, look at that's an application point of view. From a semiconductor point of view, it's very, very tough. You have to prove the chip and the application to start off. That's not the case in US. What happens in Europe? I'll give you an example. A similar company like us called Accelera started 6 years ago. Today, they get a grant of $230 million from Eurochips. And they are 5 years ahead. Unless we plan grants for startups which are trying, at least the tape-out grant. I'm not talking the IP and all. IP, yes, we have 21 patents. We have applied. That is the only USP for a semiconductor. That's one way you mitigate the risk. But the biggest thing that has come out with AI is recently 55 nanometers PDKs have come open source, and I recommend the government to open source the 180 nanometer semiconductor we have, right, SCL, to open source the PDKs. If that happens, at least in 130 I could tape out because the PDK is open source. I can try out, I can test. Similarly, if the new fabs, they are willing to work with startups, they open source their PDK, that cut down the cost of IP development. But there's still we are 5-6 years away. I still require a crore to start off. So I should say for startups, beware, you have to have some alternate revenue. In my case, it was defense. Not everybody gets a defense contract. But if you are starting in this journey, start with 130 nanometers. One example I'll give in 130 nanometers. When I taped out in 130 nanometers, our cost of tape out is only 25 lakhs. It's not 50 crores. So you try out in 130 nanometers what you can make as a semiconductor company. You can make a smart meter chip. You can make a BLDC controller chip. At least 14 to 18% of India import, which is about $4 to $5 billion, is in 130 nanometers. So this is where I would say you mitigate the risk, you start in this direction, and then get to the next node, 28 nanometer, then 16, then 5, then 2.
Sure. I've been told we might be eating into the minister's time, so I'd like to get in 2 questions before this, and obviously have some audience questions. We all know what SCOMET is, right? SCOMET, SCOMET. This is India's policy on export controls for dual-use technology. I was surprised. There's a startup that I'm looking at. They're working on a technology as cutting edge as it gets. Most sovereign nations will kill or give an arm and leg. When we started going down into what is the market for this and what are the revenues come in, and this is a guy who's from the DRDO, so it's not that he doesn't understand this and he doesn't understand the implications of this. His one quick answer to me was, yes, India will come along whatever trajectory it does, but I will start selling it to our friendly nations. And I said, no chance in hell. So what is the advice you would give about SCOMET? This is a critical piece that founders still miss. And they still come out and say that, yes, India is a great market, but I can start selling it to our neighboring regions, which is a great strategy, but that you can't bet the baby and the bathwater on that. I would like to hear all your views on that.
By the way, I just have to mention this, that the space policy is still not out, but the draft says that any space technology that you develop is automatically usable by ISRO. Just framing this.
Yeah, so but this on the policy related aspect, especially this comment that you mentioned. So it poses its own challenges in terms of like if you want to both internally and externally exports, comment for exports and even internally. Coming to the exports part first, since you mentioned it. So You want to, let's say you have a very good AI model or some AI engine that you are there. My company works on AI, especially related to sonars. So one of the few companies which actually works on AI related to sonars. We are one of them. And suppose tomorrow if I get a market or something, a willing customer or something, I cannot just export it because of the regulatory issues. And coming to that, SCOMET is for the external. For internal also, like I don't know how many people here are aware that for supplying to defense forces, you need a defense industrial license. And in the defense industrial license, you have got two categories: category A, which is more stringent, and category B, slightly lenient. If your memorandum of association of the company mentions a word software, you automatically go into category A, not B. So these are the challenges actually you face as a company.
Brigadier Vijay, you want to chime in? And I definitely want to get in one last question.
As far as export control is there, I definitely agree. You can see the market, but there is some exporting products and exporting technology should be treated separately. While our startups are growing by the day with the basic IP rules, what we had discussed, 50-50 or whatever, with the government also, after due clearances, they may be able to export the product, but one has to be wary of exporting the technology. And when you are exporting the technology, like ma'am that said, that you can export only what you own. So you can't, if you export something which is not owned by you, they'll easily reverse engineer it and get it back to you.
So, regarding technology transfer agreements, as rightly discussed, that it's very important to carefully review what are we transferring, for what purpose we are transferring, to whom, and whether this transfer includes the access to the important source code, manufacturing know-how, or only the user rights. And this is, I think, particularly relevant today as India is entering a policy transition period. And this is the time to embed stronger provisions related to indigenous design authority and IP ownership, and particularly the gap between the prototype to the procurement.
Please go on quickly.
Yeah. So one of the key things I've seen in neuromorphic computing is it's export banned. You can't buy a HBM bandwidth if you are building a supercomputer in India, because Rhombus is not allowed, which is the IP company which sells that semiconductor IP, to build anything in India. You can't just buy that IP. You have to build that IP. So one of the key export controls we need to do is, I see there are things that we export in terms of intellectual property. A lot of designs happen. In fact, 78% of the world's chips design happens in Hyderabad and Bangalore. Almost all.
Super. I can't end the panel without letting all of you guys take a stab at VCs like us. Deep tech is hot. Even a guy who's making diapers is claiming to be a deep tech fund. What are we? Are we doing anything good? What can we do better? Each one of you, please, and we'll wrap up with that.
I'll start. So one of the key things I look at is, when you look at semiconductors, look at it as a 7 to 15 year game. It's a really patient capital that is required. One of the key takeaways I would tell every VC is, look at semiconductors, but look 15 years, 7 years. Don't have this 5 years or 7 years window. That's one point.
So I would reiterate that we should not look IP mere as a filing exercise. At the inception itself, have the whole IP ownership matrix ready. Look into what rights you are giving off if you're entering into any investor discussions, whether you are giving the access to your core technology platform, or whether you are giving someone access to critical technology decisions, whether you have the rights, the authority to upgrade the system, maintain the system, or improve the system. And you need to see the gaps which are there in the framework, like where basically keeping the differentiating the foreground IP from the background IP, and in between the complete life cycle.
So my wish list for the VCs would be, I spoke about in the morning, is the triad which is often spoken about, the defense, academia, and the industry. I personally feel the academia has been or is being neglected a lot. We are looking at academia for doing product development rather than technology development. While the startups do have some kind of funding, the academia is totally dependent on government funding or internal funding. So if the private industry also takes on funding of the academia research, because all the best technology in the US has come out of their labs, their government labs, and they've been funded, or they've even gone on a GoCo model where the labs have been converted. So that is where the brains are, and we need to fund those brains. And our startups are the tools who are using the brains of the researchers and the professors to use the tools and get to the product. So my wish list is that the VCs should go into that domain also.
Absolutely.
A point for all the startups, especially those who are still in the conceptualization phase of their products, please speak to the end user first. Understand his or her pain points, and understand, and then do not try to fit whatever product that you thought of into the end user's hand and say that they are not accepting my product, or my product is not being probably appreciated the way it should be. First, understand the end user's requirement as to what his or her requirement is, and then design your product. And on a lighter note, I will share one experience. There's one PSU we had. I was in artillery, and we have some communication equipment. There was an exchange, and that exchange was supposed to be the new generation. It had a weight of about 68 kgs, and in the characteristics, it was written it's light and portable. Something weighing 68 kgs. So, don't end up with these kinds of situations, please. Speak to the end user and find out what they want, and then tweak your product accordingly. That is just one point.
For anything quickly.
I've dealt with VCs for a long time. I was a co-founder of TI. We ran the TI ISB for a while, first with Srini, then with Jay, etc., etc. So I've seen this for a while, and now I have something to say, which is this: let go of the lending partners. It's a simple percept that if you create value for the society will respect you and will feed stuff back to you, right? So when Google launched a search engine, they did not have a revenue model in place, right? When SpaceX said that, I want to go to Mars, he did not have a revenue model in place. So it's a passion of a vision which you need to, see through. That, I think, is the real job of a venture capitalist, and that will happen only when you're not chasing the hurdles, you're not changing the paybacks, you're not changing all that stuff. So I think it's time for people to privately invest in these, and when that investment happens, what happens is your ticket size becomes small. Startups fail quickly, you move on to the next thing, etc., etc. So I think our whole way of funding has to change, has to re-engineer itself, where you're not looking for a specific, returns back on your investment, but creating a social value in the society. I think that's an important thing that we are missing in the entire ecosystem of ours.
Great. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.